Hello, welcome to this lecture about international human rights. Today we talk about the death penalty, in particular the death penalty in the United States. And I will structure this lecture in a way that will show you how you can write your essay for human rights. So, the topic we're discussing today is the death penalty, in particular the death penalty in the United States of America. The USA is one of the few countries in the world that still has the death penalty, and this lesson looks at some facts and figures about the death penalty in the United States, the reaction of some groups to the death penalty, and what UN documents are involved when we look at the death penalty as an issue. Firstly, when we talk about human rights and the death penalty, we can look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and see that there are two articles in the UDHR that relate to this issue. And those two articles are in particular Article 3, everybody has the right to life, and Article 5, no one shall be subject to torture or to cruel or inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. The death penalty obviously breaches the right to life, and it can be argued that it does breach Article 5 in regards to be a degrading treatment or punishment. There is another document published by the UN that refers in particular to the abolition of the death penalty, and this is the second optional protocol of the International Convention for Civil and Political Rights. This protocol was published in 1989, and it was approved by 160 countries of the UN, and the protocol is specifically aimed at abolishing the death penalty. So the death penalty in the United States breaches this particular protocol of the ICCPR. When we look at the particular issue of the death penalty, you can look at some facts and figures of the death penalty in the United States and see how it affects people in different communities. Now, these figures come from 2018, and in 2018, 42 people were executed in the United States. The cultural composition of death row prisoners was 42% black, 13% Hispanic, and 42% white. Now, in death penalty cases, the death sentence is far more likely for cases when white victims are the murder victims than for cases when African American people are murdered. And the death penalty is more likely to be imposed when a black person kills a white person than when a white person kills a black person. And over 75% of murder victims in cases resulting in execution were white. However, nationally in the United States, only 50% of victims were white. There are various facts and figures in your booklet about the death penalty on from page 20 in book 2. These facts and figures strongly suggest that there is a racial bias in imposition of the death penalty. So there are various arguments for and against the death penalty. People arguing in favour of the death penalty often say that it's a biblical thing. So capital punishment is the right punishment for those who take away life. And they base that on an eye for an eye, as in the biblical saying. The second reason in favour is that capital punishment is a deterrent. So the fear of being executed would put people off from killing other people. One thing is for certain, of course, that an executed person will never kill again. Another argument in favour is that public opinion favours the death penalty. Another argument is economic. So one argument in favour is that life imprisonment costs a lot more money than imposing the death penalty. And there's also the argument that it's more humane to execute someone than keeping them locked up for the rest of their life. Arguments against the death penalty includes it's a violation of the right to life as proclaimed in the UDHR. It's a cruel and inhuman and degrading punishment. There's arguments that it really doesn't deter crime, that statistics don't support that assertion. Innocent people have been condemned to death in death penalty cases. So the argument against the death penalty could be that the court system is not foolproof. There's always a chance that mistakes are made. Another argument is that when a state becomes a murder, then we all become murderers. And also there's an idea that it's discriminatory and it's often used disproportionately against people from poorer backgrounds or from those with particular races or for people with psychological problems. So there are several arguments on both sides. So according to the facts and figures, many of those arguments in favour of the death penalty don't hold up. But, you know, facts and figures can be selected. Statistics are selective sometimes. But according to these figures, a 2010 poll showed that 61% of Americans were against the death penalty. The southern United States has the highest rates of murder in the country, but it also has the highest rates of executions, which means that the deterrent effect doesn't seem to be working. And there's also the fact that death penalty cases often tend to cost more than non-death penalty cases because there are various appeals that somebody on death row has a right to. So the case lingers on and on and on, and the costs just increase as these appeals go on. Now, of course, different people have different reactions to the death penalty. Amnesty International, for example, writes a yearly report on the death penalty. It advocates and campaigns in specific cases. And Amnesty actually has a website. Well, they have a website, but they also have a particular section of their website is dedicated to the death penalty. The death penalty is one of Amnesty's key areas. They advocate a lot in terms of the death penalty, and they advocate in specific cases on death row. So Amnesty plays a large role in death penalty cases in the United States. Now, the United States itself has had varying reactions to the death penalty. This map that you see in front of you shows the red states, and they are states that have the death penalty in their law books. And the green states are states without the death penalty. So you can see there are a large number of states in the United States that have the death penalty. However, many states have temporarily stopped the death penalty. And it appears also that the United States did not sign the optional protocol against the death penalty, which would make for a lot of sense in terms of their own law. Of course, the death penalty is still enacted in many states in the United States, but there is also a large proportion of states that still have it on their record books, but they don't impose it anymore. So this has been just a brief discussion of the death penalty in the United States. In terms of your essay, you could use the information here as a basis for your essay. So you would have an introduction. Then you would talk about the UDHR and which articles of the UDHR are associated with the death penalty. You would look at the International Convention of Civil and Political Rights for paragraph 2 and talk about the issue in relation to that particular convention. For paragraph 3, the effect on the community or groups in the community, you could cite the statistics about the racial bias in the death penalty. When you talk about paragraph 4, responses to the breach, you could talk about the responses of Amnesty in the United States of America. Naturally, you would have to go into a bit more depth than what I have in this particular discussion, but that would be the basic information you would use in an essay about the death penalty in the United States. So I hope this lesson has actually given you some information about two things. Number one, the death penalty, and number two, how you could write an essay about an issue in human rights. Thank you for listening, and I hope you are now thinking about the topic of your essay. I know you had a lot of things due last week, but I think now you should start thinking about what you're going to write for your human rights essay.